Hey, hey.
Hi. Greetings, folks. So if
I
this
mean,
ever...
Heidi, hey, sorry.
Yeah, Heidi Hey, yeah, or Heidi Hi that they had on that television program. But Heidi Hey is more apt. So, folks, if this ever gets put on YouTube again, it has a little bit missing out of it, and so we're going to cover the bit that was missing. I'll get to that in a moment, so I'll try and read this out. Zeta contacts the time police and asks them to come over to her dome as soon as possible. Kappatoo's Masterclass computer watches the events from Kappatoo's dome. I'm just going to move my mic nearer to me, see if it improves the sound. Masterclass computer watches the events from Kappatoo's dome and realizes that Kappatoo and Simon are in serious trouble. Back at Zeta's dome, a time police officer arrives, and Zeta informs him that Kappatoo is here with them, and the Kappatoo on Ultramatch is really his time twin, Simon Cashmere. The officer advises Zeta that he will take Kappatoo back to his dome and arrest Simon when he comes back off Ultramatch. The officer then beams Kappatoo back to his dome. Once there, the officer suddenly changes into Kappatoo's computer and is advised that it was all a trick. Two time police officers arrive at Zeta's dome, and at first she thinks they are following up on the original officer's case. When it becomes apparent that no other officers have been sent, she demands they all beam over to Kappatoo's dome. The officers are hesitant but obey. Luckily, Kappatoo has just been back to Simon's time to fill in for him seconds before the officers, which explains why he's got the trousers inside out, because he was in a rush. Zeta and Sigmasix arrive. After Kappatoo cannot be found anywhere in the dome, Zeta is forced to apologize for the intrusion to Kappatoo's computer, and everybody departs. Back at Zeta's dome, she brushes the whole thing off as a minor setback, and after her computer checks the histogram files and locates Kappatoo, she informs Sigmasix he is going back to Simon's time with her computer to bring Kappatoo home, or else, or he will be sent to Alteria. Because she's tough, she gives Sigmasix a special wristband so he can contact her, as well as a time pad and a set of coordinates to send him to once capture, and he and the computer travel back to Simon's time. So I think, right, so and it explains later on that there's a countdown on the time pad.
Wait, say that last part again?
She gives, it explains that there's a countdown on the time pad.
No, before that.
She gives Sigmasix a special wristband so he can contact her, as well as a time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that look like the hubcap.
Right.
And a set of coordinates to send in once captured. And later on, we turn out that those coordinates were the Zeta bar thing that used to be Tamasha's. Kappatoo arrives back in Simon's time and can offer no explanation as to where he has been. Later, when he and Steve are in the caravan, he tells Steve he is not Simon but Kappatoo. And Steve, who sounds a little bit more northern than last season, whose memory freeze appears to be failing as well, believes him. The next day, Kappatoo has trouble milking a cow and uses his wristband to make it talk, but cannot stop it. Two of them all... Now, this is where we start getting the bit that we missed out. We never saw this bit. The two of them also go fishing, and Kappatoo again uses his wristband to make the fish shout at them out of the water.
I can only imagine what the fish sounded like.
Right, I'm gonna count that as your sixth chuckle. This episode has made you chuckle 5 or 6 times. I was counting.
Well, I do like absurdities.
Yeah. Kappatoo is then caught by Sigmasix and Zeta's computer and taken to a nearby barn to send him back to his time. And then we get something about a delay. Simon beams back from Ultramatch expecting to find Kappatoo waiting for him, but the computer fills him in on what happened. Oh, by the way, Jeff, did you at least get one impression that the computer did?
No.
One of them you should have recognized.
If you say so.
When he said, "Marty, you can't tell you about your future, Marty."
Yeah, I didn't. The problem with him usually is I don't understand the words he says, so it hurts that part of it where he goes into some goofy voice and says something. Then I don't know what he said. So.
I thought you would have recognized him doing his Doc Brown impression.
No, because I didn't hear him say that. So.
Oh, right. You can't
No, I
know
didn't.
future, Marty. Yeah. So yeah. See, I thought you would have got it when he was doing like an American accent, but
Well, see, to me, it sounds less American and more just he's using a goofy voice of some kind. Like
right.
I can't tell. It's like he goes into goof voice, and then it's just like blah, 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 blah. You know, that's pretty much what it sounds like every time.
And for the British audience out there, I think he was doing Jack and Vera of Coronation Street, who were big at the time. It was a soap, and also when he talked into his hand or device, and he said Dan, I think he was doing the character from Hawaii Five-0, the original Hawaii Five-0.
See, my guess, because you said something about me getting an impression, was that the one time that he looked like he was sort of like he could be talking into the old Star Trek communicators, I thought maybe he was doing a Captain Kirk impression.
Yeah, I thought when he said Dan, though, because apparently a famous line from Hawaii Five-0 was "Book him, Dan." And so when he added,
Dano.
yeah, or Dan. And so I thought when he said such Dan, I thought, oh, he might be doing might be doing a Y50, a program I've never seen.
I've seen a few minutes of it ever, so not enough to really know much about it.
Right, and then we've got
it's one that they did a remake version of, and the few minutes I saw of that was funny because it was just like a 5-minute Subway commercial. Subway sandwiches, I mean.
And
because
also,
it had the guy like pointing out the new Subway subs he was going to eat to lose weight because he was a big fat guy.
And also, it probably made it funnier when Bolander said, "I wish they'd bring back Hawaii Five-0." So getting back on track, the computer fills him in on what happened, and that unfortunately, as Kappatoo has the time belt, he is stuck there for the time being. Both he and Kappatoo's computer watch the histogram and see Sigmasix and Zeta's computer travel back to Simon's time and attempt to capture Kappatoo. Now, this is where we get the key information that we sort of missed out. Sigmasix and Zeta's computer find Kappatoo, and after a brief struggle, place him on the time pad. We never saw that bit, and sets it to transport him to the coordinates Zeta gave him, and in 100 seconds. Steve, however, shows up and allows Kappatoo to slow time down, and a fight between the four of them occurs. While they are fighting, Lucy comes into the barn at more normal speed, where they are looking for a frisbee she threw. And just as the timer runs out on the time pad, she steps on it, transporting herself to Zeta's cafe in Kappatoo's time in front of Simon, the time police, and Zeta. So the only thing that we didn't know was that there was that like 100-second countdown on it. Right. Any thoughts, Jeff, on the episode? Hope so.
Thoughts.
I'll just adjust the speed.
It just went by so fast. It felt like hardly anything happened. As you said, I did chuckle several times, but I don't remember everything that I did find funny. But
I wrote some down that you. I was
All right.
Like when Kappatoo said, "You're some cute squealy," and then just that when he comes back, and then just the way he said, because he's quite good with comedy, that actor. I've had a very difficult day. That amused me. And then early on, I like the tactic by the computer, posing as the time police, and they never telegraphed it. So that was a nice bit of tension early on in the episode, and a good tactic by the computer to get Kappatoo out of it. And not only that, it then set up the rest of the episode. So I thought that was quite
Yeah,
good.
it's kind of another one of those things where it kind of seems a little bit cop out. Like if he can do that, then there should be some other things. He could have instead of having Simon, he could have like done himself thing. There's other things he could have done if he had that power. So, I don't know. It just seems like some of those are just sort of convenient plot devices as far as what his abilities are as a computer.
Yeah, that's always the trickiest thing when in writing, trying to get to a thing of where if you have them have this solution and then it's like, well, why didn't they use it before? And it's like, well, but that's also like real life, though. I mean, we can come up with something, and it's like, oh, I should have done this 5 years ago. So,
Yeah. Well, I remember I talked about how I thought in the first season they did at least in the early part of it, they did a pretty good job of sort of establishing that the watch had limits and he made some mistakes or wasn't exactly perfect with it, so it wasn't just a be all end all solution to everything. Sometimes it caused more problems than it solved. And in this one, I laughed because at first I thought he was trying to use the watch to milk the cow, and then I figured out he was trying to turn off the talking cow. So that was one of the things I thought was funny because see, that's an example of the same writers or director, whoever it is. The cow was funnier than the computer guy because it was more subtle. It wasn't so over the top. You had this like kind of just
brilliant.
almost sarcastic sounding cow.
And the actress that they got, she they got the perfect British accent for that cow. Sort of a
Yeah, but
West
she just sounds
Country.
like she's kind of somewhat bored.
Actually, the attention to detail.
Fits.
I've just realised it's a Devon accent, and they're in Devon. Nice attention to detail with the regional
There you
accents.
go.
Yeah.
See, that's one of those things. Obviously, you notice that I wouldn't, but I just thought it was good in terms of the delivery. It's just being sort of this somewhat bored sounding matter of fact cow. Which is I take some opportunities to diss Blake Seven, so I have to point out that they had a better computer voice
Right.
because the computer sounded more like a computer would sound with a human voice.
N or Orak?
Rather than being a.
Yep. Well, we had Peter Tuddenham doing the voices. Zen, Orak, and Slave. Yeah, I've gone through. I think I've gone through all of my notes. So, I mean, it didn't drag. I think the plot was pretty good in this. In the way things moved along, and there were fewer impressions than last week.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah, and also like a lot of those impressions are very much of their time, like in the kinds of people that he's doing. Like, I mean, Jack and Vera off Coronation Street. It's a regional, though very popular soap. I mean, I like how things moved along, and then there's also certain things that they've done with.
They what's her face, Melanie. She looked a little bit more natural in this one, more like what a girl on the farm would probably be wearing, as opposed to what she was wearing in the first episode. But like I said, that could have been a choice that she was trying to impress the boys or something, so she dressed up more than she normally would for farm work. But
Yeah, yeah, because
anyway, I
you
just
know,
thought she looked more natural, like here in this picture,
yeah,
as opposed to
maybe she,
being made up looking to go milk cows.
because maybe she, because like, from a counter point of view, she might think, oh, is my cousin Dishy, and then it's like, I won't bother.
Well, yeah, and I said that at the time. Like that may have been what they were trying to indicate. I just thought it was my first impression seeing her was just, yeah, this doesn't look like a girl who's milks cows most of the time. It does farm work. She just didn't have that look, like she just walked right out of a catalog for back to school wear.
I think they've improved the wristband. It just looked like a bit of fabric in the first.
It seems smaller. Is it smaller? It
It's
seemed like the first one was a little bit bulkier.
Yeah, I mean, they've actually put some electronics on it this time. It looks like.
So it looks a little bit more like, you would think that they would want it to be as small as possible that could still work, so it would be a little bit more or a little bit less obvious when you were doing
Yeah,
stuff with it.
it's just like they've built it on like an actual wrist watch and sort of added some bits on, because the one before was, these are the kind of things that we can see when we can like pause things and zoom in and like. Yeah, I like also the certain things that. Yeah, you see, Jeff, there's a certain thing I can't say because it's stuff that's been set up in previous episodes that's actually, and I just realized in seeing it a second time, oh, that was well set up. But I can't go into that because it might spoil things as it goes along. So what I sort of mean is it's like one of those things. It's like there's certain things you'll notice in second. So what do you think of this season so far compared to the first?
I don't
Or
know
was it,
if
or was it
your
like
end or mine that's going out, but you're kind of skipping your audio.
right? Okay, yeah. Well, perhaps that's a better question for later on about asking how it compares to the first, because there's still stuff being uh set up. I think I like the addition of Rulenska. I don't know what you think about her character.
Is that Zeta?
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, all right. It's a little bit kind of campy, villainous kind of thing going, but uh, I like the fact that it seems a little bit less predictable, maybe, but it also seems a little bit more all over the place. So it's kind of like take the bad with the good. It's less focused, but also I don't really know what's going to happen next a lot of the time.
yeah.
Where they're and what I mean, like episode to episode, I don't know where they're going with it exactly. Like I didn't have any idea that they were going to transport. They didn't do in the first season, so they've already come up with one idea they didn't in the first one.
It seems that maybe the stuff on Earth is more focused because it has to do with the farm, whereas there were sort of side plots in that first season. Um, yeah, like there's, and also like the stuff that's been established that was done in the first season because they sort of realize that it's continuous and they don't want to repeat themselves. So, for example, I suppose they thought that, well, we'd already covered Sigmasix in the first series, so if we just have Sigmasix on his own, then it might get repetitive, and we need to bring in this new element with the Zeta. And then you can at least get some interaction between her and Sigmasix. Whereas in the first season, it was Sigmasix talking to his servant class computer. Right. Yes, hard to say. I think there's a little bit more there appears to be a bit of a stronger sort of arc plot with this. There appears to be a bit more of an arc plot with it because there's sort of less. Although certain people might argue there were less sort of like comedic situations in the second series compared to the first, but there were bits we were amused at that maybe certain little character things that we were amused by in this, and I thought this was rather good. I think for the way things progressed, I think I'm going to give this 9 out of 10. Yeah.
It's tough because I really wish didn't have that part missing, but I guess I got to view it like I do with Doctor Who episodes that have parts missing and evaluate it despite that. So I guess I'll give it a 7.
And also, it's really moved things on in the fact that you've got Lucy now in the future. And
yeah,
so,
well, that did make me want to see what happens next with that.
yeah.
And of course, with them standing right there, then it's a little bit different than if she had just gone somewhere where she was not immediately detected. But anyway,
So
I do like that particular twist.
Yeah, so it's like they've got two good twists in it, and like early on, you've got the one where you've got the computer posing as one of the time police, and then you've got the one with Lucy going into the future, and things are moving along, and we had Kappatoo and Simon switching around. Yes, we had Kappatoo and Simon switching around in that. Yeah, although Simon disappeared in the previous episode, but we had Kappatoo's arrival in the past in 1992. So moving things along, and I think the pacing was pretty good. So I was pretty happy with this episode. Right then. So I give it 9, you give it 7.
Yep.
I don't know if there's anything else to mention. That's not right. If I press pause and then I'm going to see if there's anything worth. I've had a very some good.
I had a little bit hard time remembering who was where when they switched again. I was like, oh yeah, they sent Kappatoo back to the 20th century and not Simon. So
Yeah.
I was confused for a second, but that's not the fault of the writers. That's just me being stupid. So.
Yeah, it is quite a. It's one of these things happen when it's like you get a long. This is my pet theory that when you can have a long serial story when it's more earthbound, say something like a soap, and I think the majority of the audience can remember long storylines. I just think when it's something like this, if it's a science fiction thing and people have to remember quite a lot of ideas and a chain of ideas, I think that can be difficult for the majority of the audience when it's a chain of abstract ideas. And so that's why something like Babylon 5 didn't get us very high ratings during its time. I don't know. I mean, that's just my pet theory that certain serials are easier to understand than others. And that science fiction's like long science fiction serials where there's a lot of continuity of that it's less accessible for the audience, whereas something that's more set in reality, there's less for people to remember of certain plot MacGuffins. But maybe it's just because soaps are more relatable for people. But there still can be a heck of a lot to remember in the continuity of soaps. What do you think, Jeff? You've watched quite a bit of science fiction, and you've watched quite a few soaps.
About what specifically?
About the issue of continuity, whether you think it's harder for a mainstream audience to keep up with continuity over many years in a science fiction show versus keeping up with the continuity over many years in, say, a soap.
Well, I don't know. That kind of depends on just how much the audience is invested. In most of the soaps that I've watched, there tend to be a lot of characters. So the way they do the stories is a lot of times those characters may not necessarily actually interact with each other that much. So they kind of have, you can sort of follow some characters and not others. You know what I mean? Like, so it's possible to not necessarily be invested in all the characters, but sort of have ones you follow. Whereas I think with any kind of drama show that's not that, they tend to not do that as much. It tends to be smaller cast, and you're following like more of a continuous plot. But I mean, that's just my experience from the stuff I used to watch. I don't watch modern TV, so I don't even know what they do now. But I know I've heard from different people that there's more serialized shows than there used to be. So maybe there's more of that. I don't know. There may be less difference than there used to be.
Yeah, and because these days people can watch box sets and watch it and not wait a whole year and remember, oh, what happened 3 years ago? Whereas now they can see it more as a whole. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I yeah, and this is something we've mentioned before in previous reviews, so won't flog a dead horse. That the technology changes how people experience, particularly television, in the kinds of stories. So 9 out of 10 for me, 7 out of 10 from Jeff, and we're going to have a shorter review for a shortened episode. I'm going to end the broadcast now.
All right. See you next time.
And another episode